So it's one thing to call it, but this one statement that also triggers me, this wonderful statement, it's more important to be agile than to do agile.
Correct. That's the mindset issue.
And I'm like, yeah, but you're not a marathon runner unless you run kilometers. You're not a tennis player unless you play hours of tennis, right? So you can't, I think a lot of people are doing this agile. And I'm like, yeah, but what are you doing? You know, you have the big runner watch, you have a nice pair of running shoes, but are you running? Do you know how to do it? Does your team know how to apply it? Let's move on to stage 3.
Let me get
go ahead, sure.
one more topic as far as Agile is concerned. I think the benefit really is the focus on the communication, and you have all these.
Also, the dynamic mindset.
Yeah, the
to not be so
format,
stuck in the mud.
Correct, in terms of resetting your priorities and whatsoever. So you have these retrospectives, for example, in your Agile approaches in Scrum. But as you say, if you're a good project manager in the past, of course you reflect in a project team meeting when you do your project controlling. You don't look at the hard facts, but that has a lot to do with the understanding of what project management is all about. So you need to look at the organization, you need to look at the stakeholder relations, you need to reflect on that. And this is, where do we stand? What's going well? What's going bad? What can we do differently in the future? And so on. So, hey, retrospectives is part of project controlling, of course, and
it makes that for common sense.
Correct. Communication in project, people say, okay, we can use artificial intelligence, for example, to develop project resource plans or develop project plans as such. This is ridiculous, right? That might support, we might talk about this in a minute, but basically, you need to develop a common project picture in the heads of the project team members, in the heads of the steering committees, and so on. And for this, you need communication structures. You need to work with post-its and so on to develop a project culture insofar as you develop a common project language. Our perspective, my perspective of what project plans are for, they are supporting the project communication. If you develop a work breakdown structure, then you create a common view in the project team of what has to be done, how we name the different work packages that we need to do. So this is, the process here is even more important than the result of this project plan, because you develop this common picture, you develop a common language, you create a basis for the project work. So what I'm trying to say is the project plans don't have a meaning in itself. They support the communication in the projects, and this is what they're for. And this is picked up somehow by these agile approaches, that they focus quite a bit on this team communication and so on.
I think that if you leave the methodology or the Scrum methodology by side, I think the greatest ingredient, the greatest value that the Agile conversation has brought to modern project management is that they address the crucial issue. In traditional project management, we kind of had this mentality, we need to get the okay from the sponsor, from the king, but we don't want to bother the king. So we focus everything in initiation and planning. We keep the communication cycles short. We get the approval and he says, okay, here's your charter, and then go and leave me alone. And Agile says the problem with initiation and planning is that you, depending on the complexity of your project, there's only so much you can nail down. There's always going to be a gap of what you know, the unknown, as we call it, right? So Agile says, it makes, first of all, often we spend way too much time in planning, number one. And we're planning things that there's no way we can know.
No, too far away.
Yeah. And the other thing is, wouldn't it make sense to get not look at their sponsor as a king? He or she should get off their horse, and they should do management by walking around, in an age-old concept. And you know what? We'll have short, sweet meetings. retrospectives, we'll have reviews, right? And we'll talk to one another as human beings, right? And not create these artificial hierarchical barriers which don't contribute to conversation. I just this week was involved in a project management meeting for a nonprofit organization that was trying to get funding from the European Union, and they had a wonderful documentation, had a great plan in great detail. And I was smiling because it's kind of like if you've been in project management, you know that this happens. No matter how great your project plan is in the beginning, when people start looking at it and start understanding it, right? We have this wonderful saying, thought is not said is not heard is not understood, and understood is not agreed upon.
Not done.
All right, and then you have the done part. They had this wonderful plan, and they thought all they're going to do is present it. It's going to be a kickoff, and all of a sudden people were raising hands and going into levels of detail that were way beyond the plan, and that's kind of the reason why Agile says, you know what, the conversation is not done with a kickoff. The conversation about scope, time, and cost is not done once we have assigned approval for a project. There are legitimate things, and you mentioned it.
It's ongoing.